Hello friends, and welcome to the Linux Experience, XYZ. Well, it's that time again. I have an empty partition, and I need a distribution to fill it with. This is not for my main production machine, this is for a laptop that I have, and I'm going to choose Debian. Unadulterated Debian. We will, however, go to the testing branch, but more on that in a minute. For now, let's just install stable Debian. Alright, so here we are on the Debian website. It's just debian.org. But for now, let's get the ISO. So where are you going to get the ISO? So you can go to this page, Getting Debian, and you can click here for, I would recommend you get the net installer, okay? It's really quick and easy, and it's really the right way to do things. This right here, 64-bit PC net install ISO. If you're on the home page, and you go right up here in the upper right corner, you have a link to that exact same ISO, okay? So you download that, and then you're going to install it. Now you need to burn it to a floppy, as I'm sure floppy. You need to burn it. Boy, I'm getting old. You need to burn it to a USB, as I'm sure most of you know, if you're going to install on real hardware, like I'm going to do. However, I was having a problem with my capture card. It didn't like the signal it was getting from the computer, and it couldn't capture the installation. So I did the installation on the system in question already, so I'm going to do it for you now in a VM, okay? I'm going to do exactly the same steps that I did, and then when it's time to reboot, I will do a switcheroo and boot into the actual system on bare metal, okay? So that you're getting the full experience. All right, let's take a look. All right, here we are. I booted up the Debian Buster CD 10.5. Now, you guys who've been around for a while and are used to this kind of thing will find this installation fairly intuitive. But you guys, if you are using Ubuntu and just hitting next, 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 or some Calmaris installer, you're going to find this to be a little bit more involved. But believe me when I tell you, it's not that hard, right? Just follow along step by step. I will explain to you what we need and why we're doing what we're doing. And I think you should come away with a good understanding of your Debian system. All right, so we're not going to use the graphical install or the text install, because that'll just install plain Jane Buster, and we don't want to do that. We want to install testing. So we're going to advanced options. Stick with me. I'll explain to you why. Graphical Expert Install. That is what we want. Okay, it's the same installer as the regular, except that it gives you a bit more control, and we're going to need that. All right. So it starts off fairly straightforwardly. We're going to choose language. English is good for me. United States is good for me. Of course, your mileage may vary. And that's our locale. All right. This asks you if you need an additional locale. They always ask this. Remember, years and years ago. I don't. All right. Access software for a blind person, I do not need. Speech synthesizer, I do not need. Configure the keyboard. All right. So, American English is good for me. Obviously, you can change that. Detect and mount CD-ROM, you have to do this for sure. This is USB storage, is where our ISO is at. So it was detected. That's all fine. Load installer components, of course. Now, here you get a few extra options. None of these are really important for us, except that I like to choose a mirror. Leave these unchecked. All right, continue. Detect network hardware. This usually takes a second. That's done. Now configure the network. Debian will also do this for you. Auto configure, yes. Hit yes. 3 seconds is plenty enough time. And it is auto configuring the network. This should work. As long as you're plugged in, this should work. Domain name we don't need. Choose a mirror. Yeah, this is what I wanted to do. Now, HTTP, you might think, oh no, that's not secure, but it really doesn't matter because everything is key signed. So it's fine. United States is where I'm at. Colombia is close to me. I will pick that. This is where you can pick your mirrors. Obviously, Pick one that you think is close to you. If you don't know, you can leave it at the default debian.org and it'll work just fine. But it's nice to take the load off of those servers when you can. Proxy we don't need. Set up users and passwords. Enable shadows passwords, just leave that to yes. Allow login as root. Listen, every time we get to this, in every installation that we ever do, I'm going to say the same thing. All you guys who've been running Ubuntu all your lives and are used to not having a root account, you're doing it wrong, okay? That's not how Linux is supposed to be. You have many advantages to having a root account. So, absolutely, I recommend that you have one, okay? If you check no here, then it tells you right here that your user account will have sudo privileges, okay? If you click yes here, then by default your user account won't have sudo privileges, okay? You'll have a root login instead. That's the way it should be. Now look, I know you're all going to flip out because you can't use sudo, so I'll show you how to get sudo privileges to your regular users. The first thing I'll do when we log in, okay? I promise. But make a root account. Allow login as root, as it says. Create a root account. Yes. Now you want a root password. There we go. Do that twice. Create a normal user account now. Certainly, why not? LEX. That's the name. You know, when I got that domain, Linux Experience, I expected to get a .com, but it wasn't available. Some squatter was sitting on it, so I went for XYZ, not realizing that it would spell out Lex. And now that I come to think of it, it's kind of fortuitous, because being a bald guy talking about Linux with a name like Lex isn't such a bad thing.
Good evening, Warden. Who is it, Superman? Lex Luthor, the greatest criminal mind of our time.
Anyway, username for your account, Lex will be good. Now you need a password for your regular user. It can be the same. I usually do two different ones, but it can be. All right, so that's done. Configure the clock. There's really nothing to this. Set the clock using NTP. Yes, that's fine. Eastern time zone is where I'm at. That's fine. Detect disks. Now it's going to go out looking for your hardware, your actual physical disk that it's going to install. Partition disks. Okay. So to that end, we're going to partition manually. All right, now you get to choose the device. Okay, so virtual disk, that's what we want. VDA. In your case, if you're on real hardware, it might be SDA, or if it's an NVMe drive, it'll have that listed, whichever one it is. Hit continue. All right, now we're going to create a partition table. So create a empty partition table on this device. Yes. Continue, and it has correctly chosen GPT because we're doing a UEFI install. So there we go. So we want to modify this free space. Select that, hit continue. Create a new partition. Yes. All right. Now the first partition is just going to be a UEFI partition. So I'm going to make it 512 megabytes. That's a pretty good number. You could make it bigger than that. I wouldn't make it too much smaller than that, although you could probably get away with 300 or something. It tends to, even though in the beginning you're not using much, it tends to add up as you start installing things. All right, the beginning of the free space, yes, please. All right, use as. Now this is important. We're going to use as the EFI system partition. And if you do that, it basically does everything else for you. It turns the bootable flag on, and it knows the proper file system to install on it. You don't have to tell it, which is FAT32. All right, so we're done setting up that partition. Continue. All right, you can see there's partition number 1. We still have free space. So let's do something. Can hit continue to do something with that. Create a new partition. Absolutely. Now, it's a virtual machine. I really need a swap file, a swap partition. But I'm going to create one because I'm just showing you what I did in real life. So let's make a 2 gig swap partition. You can make it bigger. In real life, I would make it bigger. I'm just doing this for the sake of it. Beginning of the free space, yes. Use as, again. It's the important one. Choose swap area. And then you're done. You don't have to do anything else. It knows the file type of swap. And you have to hit done setting up the partition. Continue. All right, now, the remaining free space, usually I do a separate home partition, but create a new partition, because this is a virtual machine and because there's not a lot of space, I'm just going to go ahead and install everything on the remaining 19 gigs. Continue. Use as ext4 is correct. Mount point root is correct. Everything here looks good. Done setting up the partition. Continue. All right, we are done. Finish partitioning and write the changes to disk. Continue. Write the changes to disk. You have to opt in because it is inherently a destructive procedure. Continue. That was pretty fast. All right, now we need to install the base system. Okay. So this is basically just installing off the ISO image, the core utilities, the kernel, a kernel, and very important packages that you need to just run a basic system. Okay, this is what you would call the minimal install. It's almost done. Usually takes just a minute. There we go. Now you get to choose your kernel. I would choose this one. I wouldn't choose this one because this one auto updates better. So hit continue. We're going to install a new kernel anyway in a minute. All right, now in this environment where I don't need any additional drivers really at all, I can go ahead and use targeted. The actual hardware that I installed it on was a ThinkPad, and I was also able to go ahead and use targeted. You can try to just install it with targeted first, and if that doesn't work, you can come back and choose generic. Really would be fine. All right. Now it's going to finish installing the base system. Installing that 4.19 kernel, which is typical Debian, well, old. There's no way to sugarcoat it. It's old. All right, configure the package manager. We will do that. Okay, do we have another CD or DVD to scan? No. Continue. Use a network mirror? Yes. And same thing, United States. And it has by default chosen the same mirror that I used before, which is what I want. Very good. Again, you can change this to anything you like. I don't need a proxy. Use NonFree Software. Okay, so this one of the benefits. There's going to be a bigger benefit later, but one of the benefits in using the expert install is that you get to turn this on now. Okay? Yes, it's a pity that we have to use NonFree Software, but indeed we do, because that'll pull down those drivers we were talking about, the ones that might be harder to configure if you don't. Okay, so we get to turn on NonFree Software in vanilla Debian if you use the expert installer. All right. Enable source repositories and app. This is, of course, up to you. For our purposes, I'm going to say no. You can always put them in. It's just a comment line in your sources, app sources list, which you will see in a moment. All right. It's configuring apt. Now, what kind of updates do we want? Security updates for sure. Release updates for sure. Normally, backports I would also include, but you don't need backports if you're going to be running testing, and that is our plan, so we do not need to check that. All right, now, here's where the magic happens. We're not going to select and install software just yet. We're going to go down here and execute a shell. Why? Because I am going to change my sources list to testing, so that when we install the rest of the system, it's going to install actually a testing system, not Buster. All right, here we are. So if you guys have installed Arch, you'll know the drill for this very easily. But if not, first thing we need to do is make a directory. So let's make mnt. Whoops. Let's call it root. You can call it anything you like. All right. Now, you don't have LSBLK available now because it's not the proper environment for it. but DF will work, right? DFH will show you your drives and what they're called and how big they are. So this way I know that VDA3, you see that 17.3 gigabytes, that is our system. That's where we're going to install root, and that's what we want. All right, so what we're going to do, wait, let's clear the screen, make this a bit easier. All right, now first I have to mount, in this case VDA3. You're going to choose the partition that you created for your root file system. I'm going to mount that to MNT. What did I call it? Root? Yes. All right. So now that that's mounted, we're going to chroot into it. Okay. What chroot is, if you're not aware, it stands for change root. Okay. So now you see that the cursor changed from the tilde character and the pound symbol to just the pound symbol. That's letting you know that something happened, okay? We are now in, if I do an ls here, look, we're in our base system that we just installed. More importantly, we're in that environment and we are logged in as root in that environment, okay? Now, what do we have to do? We have to edit. I'm going to use Nano for it. Don't everybody get crazy. All right, we'll do a Vim tutorial some other day. Apt sources.list. Okay, here it is. Now you see it says Buster, Buster, Buster. Those are the things we need to edit. All right, so let's go down. Actually, we can comment that out now. We don't need that anymore. All right, so Buster. You have two choices here. You can either write testing or bullseye. I'm going to write testing. Debian actually recommends that you use bullseye, but I've done it this way forever, and I've never had any problems. All right, this is going to be testing dash updates. The dash is important. Don't forget that. No, this is security, so not updates. Testing dash, whoops. Security. I didn't spell that right. Security. Okay. Sometimes the fingers go and the mind doesn't want. All right. So if your source file here says security, like it does right here, then your release has got to be testing dash security. Okay. Not the slash that was there before. All right, and then for the updates, you can just change Buster to testing. All right, that should be it. We should be absolutely good to go from here. So let's exit, save yes, sources list. All right, I want to check and make sure I didn't make a mistake. So if you run this apt update command, it's fine because there were no errors. I don't actually upgrade them right here. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't, because you saw how I mistyped security there for a second. If you have a mistype in here and then you go back to the installer, it's not going to work, and you'll have to come back here and fix it. So let's exit, and we're back. So now it correctly put us to the spot we were at with select and install software, which is what we're going to do, except that now we're going to select and install software from the testing repositories. So it's all done in one go. Okay, instead of having to install a whole system in Buster and then update everything, we're going to do this as it comes. It just saves a lot of time. It saves a lot of bandwidth. And it's also efficient. Why be inefficient when you can do it efficiently? That's always the way I looked at it, right? Because you can go ahead and install the whole thing just as regular Buster, then change the repositories, and then do your updates. That'll work just fine. People have done it that way millions of times, I'm sure. But if you do it this way first, before you actually install the rest of the distribution, before you actually install all of your packages, then you're going to just do it once. Why do something twice? 2.5 times, really, when you can just do it once. Now you see that before it's taking me to the choose and configure software, it is updating the base system. That's what it's doing right now. I just saw the kernel 5.4 go by. Well, that's not part of Buster. All right. Let me just finish my thought. So we've already done an update and a distribution update, or full update, you can think about it, on the base system. So we are at this moment running testing fully. Okay. All right. Now you get to choose about automatic updates. This is probably better, right? Because it'll install those security updates automatically. I never used it. I probably should. Do as I say, not as I do. If you're the kind of person who is not great at updating your system all the time, then I would recommend that you have it done automatically. But I won't do that today. All right, here's the infamous PopCon. All right, you guys might have heard about this. It created a little furor a few months ago to doing with Ubuntu, or Ubuntu brought it up. They didn't actually do anything wrong with it. All right, this is a package usage survey, okay? The developers would like to know what packages you installed, what packages you're using, so this way they can know how they should focus their time, you know. It doesn't send personally identifiable information, and everybody needs to just get a grip, okay? I'm not telling you what to do. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. But I don't see the harm in it, and indeed, I do see the benefit in helping a great project like Debian. With a small little thing like giving them my usage statistics is fine with me. All right, I'm going to say no here only because this is the VM and it's not. It shouldn't count. That's all I'm going to say about that. All right, now here we get to install our desktop environment. You can choose absolutely anything you want here, of course. GNOME is not my thing, and choose one of the others. I'm going to go with XFCE. Simply because that's a wonderful platform to build upon, okay? Any of these would work. Mate would work. LXDE would. I'm actually surprised that they still support LXDE. I thought that was pretty much done. LXQT, of course, is not done. But XFCE, if you're going to install tiling window managers, like I will be doing with this in a future video, XFCE is a good choice, okay? LXQT, that will also work. I hate to get embedded into the Qt libraries if I don't have to. Okay? LXDE is great. I'm really surprised it's there. I would have considered that more if I knew it would have been here, but we're going to go with XFCE. All right? You could, like I said, you can choose anything you want. And if you need a web server or SSH, and you check those, standard system utilities, I would recommend that you keep that checked. Continue. All right. Now, here's a time when all of those packages, when all of those wonderful developers, all of the developing work done inside of Debian and upstream of Debian. Don't forget, Debian is not really upstream. Debian is the distribution. All the wonderful people who make the software, they're upstream. Now, all of their work is coming down to us. Absolutely free and easy. There's nothing beats Linux. Absolutely nothing. So I'll pause the video here. We'll come back when it's done. Alright, that's done, and it automatically puts us to the next step of the installer, which is install the grub bootloader. So we'll hit continue. And now you're going to get an option here that you might not be familiar with. Just choose the default. I'll show you. This one. It has some kind of a fallback system where it puts the grub in a different path, or a backup in a different path. I've never used it. I've never had reason to use it. So I would just say no here. You shouldn't have any problems. But if you do have problems booting later, you can add this option in. Okay? But you shouldn't. Alright, so let it go ahead and install grub the old-fashioned way. And we are done. Okay, we're going to finish the installation. Alright. Clock set to... Oh, we're not done. Why didn't I do this before? Alright, UTC, yes. Alright, so if you dual boot with Windows, you might want to say no here. Otherwise, say yes. Okay, alright. So we're going to boot into the new system. Before I show you the hardware, I'm just going to boot up the system in VirtualBox just to show you that it worked, okay? We'll be right back. So here we are on grub of our new system. Let's go ahead and boot into it. You see that that was a 5.8 kernel. Pretty new kernel, right? So you're not running, this isn't anymore. All right, now let's sign in. And we have, here it is, our vanilla desktop. First thing we should do, we don't have to do any updates because we just did that. Let's check and see how much memory we're using. Look at that. This is in a VM too. 332 megabytes. That's pretty good. All right, that's pretty good for a fully functional desktop. All right, let's, not sudo. Sign in as root. Let's install NeoFetch. Yeah, go ahead and install that. It's a very quick installation. Fetch, come on. All right. Bullseye SID. It always says /SID. I don't know why we didn't install anything in SID. You can see this is a virtual machine, but the kernel is 5.8. We have 1,400 packages. I never changed the resolution. I'm not going to bother. We're going to reboot right now. But here is our desktop. Before I forget, I told you I would show you how to add your user to the sudoers file. You actually don't have to do that much. This is a rare case where doing something in Debian is easier than doing it in other distributions. All right. So sign in as root. Now, usermod dash lowercase a g sudo, which is the group we're adding the user to, which is next lex. That's it. Usermod dash ag, the group, which is sudo lex. That adds lex to the group. All right, now that's how you get that's how you do the sudo file. Okay, so now you have a root account and you have your home account and your regular user account with sudo privileges. It wasn't that hard. All right, so now hopefully you have an idea of how to install Debian testing. Obviously, XFCE is just a personal choice. If that's too simple for you, you can install GNOME, you can install KDE, you can install Cinnamon or any other modern desktop you like that you saw there. It really won't make any difference in the install procedure, as I'm sure you can figure out by having watched it. Thanks for watching this far. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, please hit that like button and maybe subscribe. And you can check my website out at linuxexperience.xyz. There'll be a blog post about this video, and you can also look me up on Patreon if you so desire. Any attention you can give me would be appreciated. Till next time, thank you.